Welcome everyone to this month's open channeling call of the wisdom of the greater consciousness. As I was saying before we started the recording, I'm just so absolutely grateful to be able to do this work with you all in this community that, has so many people that come back month after month. And I know the timing of this event this month. It's May 27th, 2021 for the archive. I know that this was a challenging time for a lot of people because school is ending and the long weekend is coming, and a lot of people emailed ahead that they were going to be listening in the replay only. But what I really love about the energetic way that this container is comes together for each time that we do this is it doesn't matter if you're here physically in this moment or if you're listening physically in a moment at some other space and time. The energy is really attuning and tuning into what we all need right now, in our right now, in the moment that we're present with this conversation. So I really just love to bask in that a little bit, in the knowing that everything is so perfectly timed. And it's not, if we expand it beyond this conversation of this call right now, we can really settle into the idea that everything really is divinely timed and we aren't missing anything, and we can't miss something really that is meant for us, that is attuned with us, that is resonant and vibrating with us. So I just want to start the conversation there today because I think it's so important to, as a grounding intention for all of us, to just be in that space of knowing. So many of you have been here before. I do like to take just a minute to talk about the greater consciousness and who they are and what they represent, because it helps me to come into deeper connection with them as well. And as normal, as usual, we have the lovely Margaret here today, and Margaret will be helping to moderate the call today. So if there are questions or things that come up during the channeling that you need to get our attention, please go ahead and use the chat box for that. Margaret will be monitoring that as well. And when we get to the questions portion of the event, as usual, we'll give instructions on how to ask a question, and Margaret can help with that. Also, thank you so much, Margaret. I'm completely grateful and honored to have you as part of this community. So, the greater consciousness represents all of the wisdom that ever was, all of the wisdom that will ever be, and all of the wisdom that's here right now in this time and space within every living being. So, in essence, they are the infinite wisdom that resides within us. And so, as we're doing this work, as they're coming through with their messages, they are tapping into each one of us, each one of our unique set of wisdom, unique set of infinite wisdom that resides within us. And they'll be bringing forward the messages that tune in and tap into that vibration. And so, as we go along today, many of our questions, mine included, I think are going to be answered, or at least the opportunities and possibilities will present themselves for whatever we are facing or working with or expanding into in this time, in this moment. So I'm just going to take a breath here and ground a little bit more. Our normal process in these events is that I'm going to let the greater consciousness speak for as long as they feel necessary and have information to share that's pertinent for us today. That usually goes about 30, 35, 40 minutes, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. And then we'll go into the questions. And as always, the questions can be about the channeling or anything that's on your heart and in your mind right now. So the big thing that the greater consciousness has been talking about a lot lately, and they're bringing into this conversation right out of the gate, is this idea or this felt sense, they're saying, of the energy that is here on the planet right now. We just had this full moon, super moon, full eclipse that a good part of the US was able to witness. We all felt it. The greater consciousness is saying that it really is the energetic vibration of these big waves slapping up against the shore. And so we've been feeling these waves, this momentum of energy building, building, building. And it really came to a peak with this full moon and with the full moon energy. And so many of us, if we aren't already, are going to start to feel, things really speeding up, things really accelerating for us. And one of the I was sharing before we started the call today that as I was having this conversation with the greater consciousness right before we got online, and the greater consciousness was saying, yes, we are feeling um, the speed up happening, and some of that has to do with the world opening back up in many ways, like things starting to open, the expansion of the lives that we were once living pre-pandemic, that things are starting to come back a little, a little, a little. And some of that is based externally on what's being allowed to open and not open, but also internally, right? How we're feeling safe, secure, or not feeling safe or secure in the moments, and getting to choose what works for us, what doesn't work for us. But the greater consciousness is saying that yes, the world is opening, but the bigger piece of this and what we're really feeling is that our hearts are opening, our heart centers are opening, our soul connection is deepening. And this is happening not by doing, but really just by being here physically on this planet at this time. They're saying that it's kind of that idea that there is an up leveling happening, and I know that language can be off putting to some people, and that's okay. As I say often, use another word that feels good to you, but there is a vibration rising. There is a consciousness opening here on the planet that we're all part of. All of us, not just on this call, not just in this community, but all of the living beings on the planet. Now, some of the living beings, like the animals, they're already attuned to it, and so it's not, they're not feeling this the way that we as humans are feeling it. But we are all every being is being impacted by this change, and so as we tune into this idea that we've got the waves and they're coming and they're hitting the break wall or they're hitting the shore and maybe they're splashing up, they're bigger waves than we've been feeling for a long time. And that is saying a lot because the energy of the last 18 to 24 months has been so big and so bold on this planet. But they're saying this, as they said just a few minutes ago, this is sort of the climax, right? The peaking of this energy. And from here, the opening that's happening for all of us is really big. It's really expansive. Now, the greater consciousness is saying that along with this expansion comes the need for us to continue to let go, but to really put some things to rest that we've been dragging along behind us. And so while the accelerator pedal is going to start to be depressed, for many of us, it is the action of balancing both sort of this forward momentum and looking at the things that are coming up for each one of us as the momentum is moving forward. So it's a little bit of like looking at our stuff on steroids. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because when we can become aware, when we are aware that this is what's happening, we can put ourselves in a position where we're not feeling so victimized by the energy. It's not so victimized by the things that are coming up in our face, but to know that these things are coming up even if they look like they're things that we've dealt with before. And the greater consciousness is saying for many of us, that's really when things do come up for us, especially in the next, you know, they're saying that, 4 or 5 months, the things that are coming up are going to be really old, really familiar patterns. And many of us, the thinking side of our minds, can go into the place of, oh gosh, I've already dealt with this. I thought I was over this. I thought that this was cleared from my, from my system. And that those are valid, human emotions. And so the greater consciousness is not asking us in any way to deny those feelings, but also to look at it from the broader perspective. And that perspective is that these things are coming up at a different layer. They're coming up at a different level. Much of this is very deep, very old, almost to the root system of some of these beliefs, some of these patterns, some of this conditioning, so that we can finally let it go, or let as much of it go as we can. Because some of these things that greater consciousness is saying aren't meant to be fully let go in this lifetime. Like there are things that will keep coming up, but it'll be easier and easier each time when we are able to come into contact with what they are and know that there's nothing that we've done wrong. There's nothing that we're doing wrong in the way that we're processing through our journey, but that it is this continuous opportunity for expansion, this continued opportunity for expansion. Now, the other piece of it is, and this is what we've talked about for months and months now, is this idea of this. And it's not just processing through the shadow or the old, outworn beliefs, but it is bringing both the shadow work and the experience of the soul, what the soul is bringing in co-creating with us, into the mix. So we've got this little bit of a full spectrum of both the work that can trigger us, that can feel challenging, but also that the highs, the ways that things that we've been longing for begin to manifest for us, the way that things that we've been desiring start to show up in our lives in ways that may be surprising, in ways that may be unexpected, and yet are right on time, are right perfectly timed. And so the invitation here today with this energy, using energy, being present with and aware of and acknowledging this energy, is to use it to allow all of what is coming up, all of what we may deem to be challenging and difficult, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as they say, all of it coming up and being here present for us right now in the moment, moment by moment by moment, step by step by step. What that does for us, and really it is the exclamation point on a lot of what we've been talking about over the last several months. It is the space where we bring the soul and the human experience together, and then that's how we really start to move forward out into the world, whether that's out into the world from an energetic perspective, out into the world from a physical perspective, or both. It is the it is the gateway, it is the doorway for us to move into new chapters of our lives. The beautiful thing, and we don't talk about astrology too much, but I do things I hear and read and sense really stick with me. And one of the things that I either heard or read um, in the last day or so was that the sign that the moon is full, or was full and eclipsed, is in the sign of Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is a playful invitation. So there's playful energy here in the mix. It's like this big stew pot of, the exploration of old patterns and what we can let go, the openness to and allow in the good feeling, high energy, high vibration manifestations that we've all, each one of us, have been placing into our heart mind, and the mix of allowing all of this to be here right now is the there is the way forward, they're saying. It's very powerful. And one of the things that they want to acknowledge for us, especially here, the folks that are here within this community, is that each one of us in our own unique ways have really found a way to come into deeper resonance with where we are and who we are evolving into during this time. Like there is this big aha awareness, this opening to a deeper, more authentic connection to our inner self and our inner knowing and our inner wisdom. And I think that that's an important acknowledgement to just sit with for a moment, because so often when we're in the thick of things, when the energy feels frenetic, or where we feel like things are happening one, two, three, in sequence, it's hard sometimes to come into contact with the awareness that we are also, you know finding our ways back to ourselves, home to ourselves. And that home is really the evolution that our soul is here for. Now, one of the things that we talked about this past week in my twice monthly community, which the Greater Consciousness is making me aware of and reminding me of right now, is this idea that this is a really good time to do some more ceremony or ritualistic ways of letting things go. Very often the greater consciousness doesn't bring these types of tools in, but they're saying, and they said this the other day, and they're saying it again here on this call, that there are many ways, many ways to start to release things that we know are no longer serving us, or release the part of these things that are available for release right now. And a couple of things that I shared this past week that they want me to share again is the idea that we can find a way to take these things that we're aware of that we want to let go and imprint them into something. One of the things that I've done in the past was, I was very guided a few years ago when I took a solo trip to Hawaii. I found a rose quartz heart in the gift store of the condo community I was staying at. And I was guided during the course of a day to just hold that crystal with me. And every time something came up that really felt like an old memory, or felt like an old pattern, or felt like the critic voice coming in to get up in my face all judgmental, that I was able to just intentionally put those things into this crystal. And at the end of the day, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with this crystal, but at the end of the day, I was guided to take the crystal to the ocean, which I happen to be staying right on, and give it back to the ocean. Like, give this crystal to the ocean, and along with it, all of the things that I had put in the heart to be transmuted, right? So these things don't damage the earth, but it is a really visceral way, a cathartic way to get these things out from the human body and out into, the world, so that we have some space to allow new to come in, where we have space to recognize when there's new things there for us, new energies for us that maybe don't have the space to find their way in because of these things that we're holding on to. The other day, the greater consciousness called humans a bunch of hoarders, that we tend to hoard old experiences, past experiences, memories that don't serve us, things that don't serve us, relationships that don't serve us, jobs that don't serve us, and we drag them along like corpses, for lack of better terms. They keep showing me the zombies dragging corpses through the streets. It's a very unsettling visual, but I think that is the point of what they're saying, right? These things are dead, they're dying, they're old, they're not functioning in the world, and they're not functioning within us. And so when we can find a way to really release these things, and they're saying right now, because of the energy being as heightened as it is, the doing something of physically a ritual or ceremony to release it is really important. The other thing, and I think there's a couple of us um, here in this community that follow Tosha Silver. And Tosha is this amazing, if you don't know her, look her up. She's my homegirl for sure. She teaches a process where you go and get um, one of those hairy coconuts, like with the milk in them. So not the young coconuts, but the really hairy brown coconuts with the milk in them. And you do the same thing that I was explaining with the crystal, and you can sit with the coconut, um, if you can find them in your area. I know some areas are harder than others to find these, but you sit with the coconut, you meditate with it, you talk to it, intend or visualize these things that you're ready to let go, to go into inside the coconut. And then when you feel complete with that, you smash it. And it is such a like felt cathartic release to smash this coconut after you've put put your intentions there, put the old the things you want to release into the coconut. And so that's another way to do it. And the reminder is that then you don't want to consume the meat of the coconut as much as it smells so good, because put your you've put your old, worn out, outdated beliefs and things in there. So you want to clean it up and get rid of it. A lot of times in the past, I've left it for the animals because again, the animals don't take on that energy the way that humans do. So it actually works in that way too. But whatever feels good to you, there's lots of different things. One time I was running a group in Northern California where we went to Goodwill and we got plates, like dinnerware, and we like smashed the plates. Again, each plate um, connecting to something that we wanted to let go of. So, whatever it is, however it works for you, if you have your own practice, the greater consciousness is saying it doesn't have to be one of these things, but this releasing and doing it from our physical human side is really important during this time. And they're saying, because they keep showing me like this 5 month, 6 month window, during this time, we can do this release multiple times. So this doesn't have to be a one and done, just like as we're working through our, our recognition of these things and we're letting them go normally, in our normal process or practice, that we can do these types of rituals over and over again. So if there are other things that you've done in the past that really feel resonant to you, do those. But if it feels good to you, if this feels like your truth to you, the greater consciousness is saying this is the time to really take that kind of active action around this release. It's really interesting because it's like they're showing me lungs breathing, right? It's the expansion, contraction. So we're all doing this releasing at our own pace, but there's this collective that are all going through this release in one way, shape, or form right now. And it's because we're being invited to do it just by virtue of the energy that's here on the planet. So it's not like there's something that people have to sit down and figure out. There's not anything that any of you need to sit down and figure out, just to allow what rises up within you to be acknowledged and to be let go as much. And again, they keep coming back to this, so I'm going to say it as much as possible. It doesn't mean the whole thing needs to be let go. They're also saying that sometimes we let things go and then we unconsciously kind of go back and grab them, or we're unconsciously tethered to these things, whether it's a belief or a relationship or a job or you know, um, a way of showing up in the world. And so to be aware of that as well. when we can tune into the things that we're releasing, we often can tell those things that we're like not quite sure we're ready. Like our human mind, our thinking mind says, "I know I should release this thing." But our heart mind, a lot of times it's the young aspect within us that's holding on tightly to these beliefs. That part of us is like, yeah, but I'm not so sure. And so just this is a dance. It's that expansion and contraction that they were just talking about, of being really aware and working with it, dancing with it, being fluid in it. And so if it comes back around and you recognize that you didn't quite let it all go, that's the time to be really gentle and nurturing, because that means that there is a part of us that hasn't quite gotten to the place where it's ready to let go. And so then we work with that aspect of ourselves. We come into connection with that part of us, whether we don't have to even know which part it is. There's no need to sit down and figure out, oh, that must be the 4-year-old aspect of me. It doesn't have to be that. If we connect with that, that's wonderful, but it doesn't have to be that. It's still wonderful, they're saying. Just to be able to acknowledge that there are some things that, as much as we can intellectually know, we we want to let go of something, it doesn't mean that we can fully let go of it. So just to be gentle in this process, gentle in the process in whatever way you feel called to do this release, but to really come into contact and touch with these things so that they can be let go as much as they're ready to be let go. Now, again, that they're going back to this 5-month window, which is really interesting to me. But they're saying that this is the time to not just clear out, but also to start to fill in with feelings and emotions and calling our desires and biggest dreams to light. And we've talked about this before, but it's almost like this process that they're showing up is like empty out and then start to allow the filling to start to begin, right? Filling to begin, filling to begin more and more and more, because right, they're showing me that this time is primed for us to be doing this. And it is, as they said, an ebb and flow. So we may be doing both and at the same time, releasing and filling, releasing and filling. They say that this preps us for, the last part of the year. And what they're saying about that is that it becomes this, it's like right now. And I know that this is said often, so I'm just asking if this is the right way to say it. But what they're making me feel is that right now is the gestational period, right? And so what are we doing? We're taking care of ourselves. We're taking care of this thing that we're about to birth, because as we get towards the end of the year, the doors really do fly open for many of us, even more so. And I know in just talking to clients and even friends that are in my circle, the doors are flying off, for lots of people already. And so they're just saying more is to come, more is to come. And I believe we talked about this a few calls ago, but it's this idea of the 1,000-pound snake, right? It's this idea that we can right now, here in this time, start to be laying the groundwork piece by piece by piece for what is coming. And if we look at, I use the 1,000-pound snake as the example, right? Because that's what they gave to me. But if we look at our big dreams and we look at our big desires and we say, what does my life, what does my physical space, what does my internal energetic space want to look like, so that when these things start to really manifest, when the doors start to really open even more, even wider, with the experiences that we're asking for, even if they come in ways that we're not expecting, what are the things that I can do to really lay that groundwork now? How do I create the container so that when these things come, I feel in my most connected self? And what the greater consciousness is saying, this isn't all inner work. This is outer work too. This is our the way that we manage our finances, or in my example, they're bringing into my example is this idea that I keep saying, like, I really want to implement a accounting software for my business. And so those are though even those types of things are things that are laying the groundwork, that they're building the foundation for what is to come. So it doesn't have to just be the energetic. In fact, it can't just be, because we are in this and arena, right? So we have to look at the human aspect and the soul aspect of how we lay the groundwork. And I think that's so powerful, because to me it feels like, and not that we need it, but some of us do, but it feels like this permission that we don't have to, there's nothing that we have to wait for. That actually, this building, as we're inspired to build and lay this groundwork, is really so important for the whole of who we are, and not just for waiting for something to happen. Many of us, and the I love the concept of manifestation. To me, it's so beautiful, and I see it in my everyday living. But there are some aspects of manifestation the greater consciousness is saying that we tend to confuse sometimes as humans. And that the biggest point of confusion is that we put the idea into our, manifestation box, and then we wait. And a lot of times what happens is that waiting time, because our thinking minds want to be engaged and active, that becomes a time where we start to create this idea that things are going to just happen virally, that we can just wait around, and then someday someone's going to knock on our door and be like, here's all of the things that you put in your manifestation box. And that can happen. But that's where the tuning into our inner knowing comes in, right? That we've been talking about so much, and saying, like, when I feel inspired to take an action, that's when I take the action. When I feel inspired to wait for further instructions, that's when I wait for further instructions. The greater consciousness is acknowledging that this is not easy for many of us, because we're conditioned, we're trained to take action, many of us. And so the opportunity here, right, again, is to come into contact with our inner knowing, with our inner being, as best we can, and feel into, am I feeling inspired to do these things? What are the things? And I love, like, even for my own, in my own practice, I ask often, show me the next right step. Show me the next step that helps to lay this foundation for the dreams that I'm wanting to come into fruition, for the dreams that I feel I'm being pulled towards. What's the next right action, the next inspired action? And then when it shows up, you do that. And then when it shows up, you do that. And then when it doesn't show up, you wait for further instructions. So this is the dance, this is the ebb and flow that the greater consciousness really wants to, put an emphasis on today in all of this. So we're being asked to consider, right? Because it really has to resonate with you before you take action. And if it doesn't, it may not be the timing right now for your particular journey. But as they're tapping into the collective energy of this group, this is the messaging that's coming through. So the likely this is going to apply to all, if not very many of us who are on this call today or listening in replay. So they're asking us to really to come into contact with these things that are coming up, to be let go. They're asking us to consider, doing something of a ritual or ceremony to let it go, to really let these things go, and to be gentle with ourselves as we ebb and flow through these next several months of both awareness of things that come up into our face that need to be looked at, and also to acknowledge the joyful things that we're manifesting, the ease and flow that is in our life at the same time, that this and then to really start to find the ways to come in contact with what is the next right step, or what is the next inspired action? And then to start to take that step, one step, one step, one step, as we move through these weeks and months to come. It's really powerful. It's in the greater consciousness keeps coming back to this idea that if we are looking outward and we're recognizing, we're witnessing where the world is opening again, to use that as a reminder to come into contact with how our heart space, our heart center is opening little by little, bigger than it's ever been before, wider open than it's ever been before, because that acknowledgement really allows us to come into this deeper contact with that space within us that is is the is the container for all that's coming, right? It's the container for all that's coming in for each one of us. It's really powerful. And I guess the greater consciousness wants to end with this, because this is such a human thing that many of us experience. And it's this: don't quit a second before the miracle happens. And what they mean by that is that we can feel so anxious and so excited and so connected and so aligned with what's coming. And then it doesn't come exactly as we expect it or when we expect it. And as humans, we tend to go into this space of, I've done something wrong, I'm doing something wrong, I'm not worthy of this, I'm not. So just to be aware of when we feel like giving up, acknowledge those moments, because they're real, they're how we feel. There's no right, wrong about it. But then, to come into deeper connection with the knowing that, if it hasn't manifested, you're not at the end yet. You're if it's, that's the beauty of this practice. The greater consciousness is saying, and this is a really bold statement, from them. It is coming. This is a message for each one of us. It is coming. These things are coming. And to continue to do your evolutionary work, your human, your soul, both at the same moment, coming into that balance point, and allow for the unfolding. Participate in the unfolding where it feels guided, where it feels inspired. The greater consciousness is reminding me that there's lots of tools and processes that we can use to come into that greater discernment. We've talked about a number of them in this community, but they're saying don't forget the tools that you have in your toolbox when you just aren't sure, when you just can't, in the moment can't tell, is this inspired or am I trying to force something? And the best thing to do at that time is to not do anything until you get clear, until the clarity comes one way or another. I'm super excited to see how these weeks and months start to unfold for each one of us. It 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 feels so powerful. It feels so golden and sparkly that I'm just in awe of how, as humans, as souls, as the collective, that we really can expand so intentionally and so effortlessly into the things that we're really feeling drawn towards. Mhm. So we're going to open it up to questions now. And again, anything that's on your heart and mind, whether it has to do with this channeling or not, as our usual process, just you can go ahead and put a question mark in the chat box if you're wanting to ask a question. If you're not on mic or don't have availability for mic, you can type the question in. If you don't have any questions, that's okay too. There's no forcing this, but we're here to explore anything you guys want to explore.
Well, Amy,
Yes.
I think I'll just go first,
Yeah.
case, just because nobody wants to go first. Um, what do you think is the significance of, or is it just random, the 4 to 5 month thing?
Oh, it's definitely not random. It's definitely not random. Haven't. It's well. Let me just let me just see what they say. Is what they're saying is that they they tend to not give timing most of the time, but there feels what they're making me feel, and it's funny because they're being a little bit tongue in cheek with us. I'll just say that because one of the things that we often do as humans, and this is not a judgment for any of us, and especially not you for asking the question because I love the question, Margaret. But they're saying like we want to know the end of the chapter. We want to know what's coming next. And so part of this process is to explore, but also to know that it's not wherever we are right now, whatever we're feeling in this moment isn't a forever feeling. It's like they're giving a light at the end of the tunnel. They're also telling me that energetically there are big shifts coming as we're moving towards the end of this year. So, and that can come in lots of different ways. I'm not an astrologer, so I can't really speak to it, but it feels, it feels to me that if we look at the astrology of this year, that likely there are some big shifts happening. But they're saying that it's also about this collective rising, this collective awakening. It's like a tipping point, as we're doing our work, and we'll use that work in quotes, but as we're doing our exploration internally, externally, the whole of who we are, and each person that is accepting that invitation to do that is adding to this collective bucket, and the collective bucket is growing and growing and growing. And so they're really showing me like this tipping point, right, of consciousness, of awareness, of awakening. Now with that is this, and so with that it could also there could be ramping up of behaviors that as humans we might feel deemed as bad or wrong or abrasive. But so that's the energy, is that there's this big tipping point of really awakening awareness, consciousness, inspired action, they're saying, in whatever way that shows up for you. And that's the sort of it's the next level for all of us. They're also showing me that as we move towards the end of the year, the the energy is ripe for greater and greater recognition of these manifestations that we've all been putting in our manifestation boxes, right? It is prime for those things to start showing up, and it's not random. It has to do with the collective uh, awakening, the collective tipping point, and how we set ourselves up right now for the availability, for this having that space and availability for those things to come. you know and as always they're saying it to also hold space to be surprised and delighted by the way things show up, because they're making me feel too like there's a lot they're showing me, like fireworks, right? Which it's like unexpected. You never know what the next firework is going to look like, but it's an ooh and an ah most of the time, except for the booms, which a lot of people don't like. But it's a really, I think I love the analogy, right? Because it's like beautiful colors and shapes, and then you've got that boom in there every once in a while that is part of the process. So that's what's coming. That's what's going to be here for many of us. And the more the more we intentionally come into contact with ourselves and our inner knowing and our inner exploration and expansion, I think the more beautiful that fireworks show is going to be. And they're showing me it like, into the future. Like it's not just a one and done moment where, like, oh my gosh, if I don't see the fireworks in, I don't know what 5 months from now is, we'll just say October, that somehow I've missed it. They're saying that this is an ongoing, this is like the new normal, where this, for many of us, not all of us, and when they're saying not all of us, it's not all of us here in this community, it's also not all of us in the collective, but it is there is a greater majority of people that are moving into this space where they can really savor all of what's coming and all of what's here right now, because that's the other thing, there's nothing that we have to wait for to really experience these things. If that does that answer the question?
Yeah, thanks. We have a couple questions. First, we have Ryan.
Thank you. Hi, Amy.
Hey Ryan, how's it going?
Good. So good to see you.
Good to see you.
Oh my goodness, the message this month of this call is so resonant for me. I was like, I could not miss it. And I was hoping that you could just sort of expand particularly on the last point that you made, but I also think it pulls in a lot of some of the other, things the greater consciousness brought to light, as well as a little bit touching on a question that looks Manju's asking as well. But I feel like so much is very close to manifesting in my life, even insofar as like I feel like it showed up, and then it's almost like I was shown this new Mecca, this beautiful city, and then a blindfold was put on before they put me in, and it's like not fully here yet, and I don't feel like anything is wrong. I feel like it's so close. I can taste it, but I feel unexpectedly tired. Like I feel like, okay, I've been here before. I do know some things I can do that will help. I know that I can get through this, but I just can't tap into more energy to like revitalize me enough to make it next. And so the last couple of days I've just been feeling particularly kind of low. And I was wondering if you had any advice for how to just, I don't know, like perk up a little bit for right now.
Yeah. Well, the first thing the greater consciousness is saying is that maybe this is a time for rest and not for perking up. Maybe this is the time for you to, again, it's the paradox of, how we feel called and then what we really need in our bodies. And so sometimes we tend as humans to judge things as like, oh, I'm not feeling so perky. I'll use your words. And so what's wrong? And yet what the greater consciousness is saying is that actually there's nothing wrong. This is an inspired action. Rest and wait for more information. Inspired action, rest and wait for more information. Now, what they're saying about about what they showed you, right? About what you saw. It's funny. They're bringing me to like planetary retrogrades, right? And if you know anything about planetary retrogrades, like planets go back through the cycle that they just came through to go back and revisit anything that might have been missed. And so this it's like they want you to see that what you're looking for, what you're wanting, what you're longing for, what you're being called towards really is what it is there, it's here. And that the invitation right now is to just make sure that you got your house clean, that there's no closets you're hoarding stuff in, but gently and easily and as you feel inspired. And then trust and the don't quit a second before the miracle happens or a minute before the miracle happens is so appropriate for you right now as well, because they're saying that it can be, yes, you're not deeming anything that you've done anything wrong, but there is a part of you underlying that it's like, I was almost there. I almost wish they didn't show it to me because now I can't see it. And yet it was shown to you as a way to say, look, you are what you're seeing, what you're envisioning, and what is coming into your space, into your container is in alignment. And now it's just a matter of how do you prepare? And I don't know if you were on the call when we talked about the 1,000-pound snake, but it's like, how do you prepare a container for the 1,000-pound snake? What is that snake going to need when it gets to be 1,000 pounds? And start to put those things into place now. So now you have a clear vision of of some aspect of what's coming in, or some version of what is available to you. So sit with where you feel inspired to take some actions to prepare your space for it, but also honor the moments where, man, the energy is just low and I don't need to take any action right now. You know, they want to remind you, and I know we've said this to you before, you're not going to miss it. You're not going to miss it. And so how do you get there? You don't want to get there looking like you just crawled through the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. You know, you want to get there like rested in your best Lululemons, like ready to be present and participative in it. And I think that's a really important piece for you. But I also really, I feel like it applies to the collective here in this community as well. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it definitely answers the question very powerfully. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
you. Okay. I have from Manju. She says, I'm going to read this because she can't use a microphone today.
Sure.
So she said, I noticed that old deep patterns are coming up that I want to release. I'm wondering if these patterns will be released fully for us finally in this season for this lifetime, because the patterns that are coming up for me, I'm realizing are conditioned thought patterns that are coming from upbringing / culture, etc. And I feel so tired how many times I need to let them go.
Yeah. Oh, Manju, I so hear you. And I think we've talked about this already, but let me come back to it for you. And there's two things that are happening, right? I mean, the beliefs, the patterns are coming up for you to acknowledge, and not resist. You know, we go into this space of, like we were talking earlier about, oh my gosh, I've been here before, here it is again. And what they're saying is that that these things are coming up for the purpose of clearing and letting go as much as you can in the moment. Some of these things that you are becoming aware of can be cleared, and cleared for the most part, or cleared altogether. Some of them are very deep. You know, we talked about, like, right now we're working at that core, at the root of some of these things. And because of how deep they are and how connected they are within your physical and emotional spiritual system, they may be conditioned patterns that you have with you for this life journey. But as you begin to acknowledge them, as you call them into light, as you release what you can of them, you become aware of when the patterns come up, but they don't have as much control over, or they don't have as much influence over your life. You're able to see them and go, I know you, I know this pattern, but I don't have to act on the pattern. I don't have to repeat the pattern. It may still show up. It may still be there. In some cases, it will be. Like, they're showing me that there are just some of the deeper patterning and conditioning that not only came through this life experience, but you've been bringing through life experience after life experience with you, because each time you come into contact with an aspect or a piece of these patterns that you become aware of, you are expanding and expanding and expanding. Same as what we just said with to Ryan, you know, when you're feeling tired, give yourself some rest. Often we do this as humans all the time, is that we're like, okay, I see the thing, now I need to just rip the band-aid off and be done with it. But there's so much invitation here to take it a step, a step, a step, to savor it, even if it doesn't feel good to savor some of the hard stuff, but to find a way to really be in that space of allowing digesting, savoring, and then letting it go. The greater consciousness is saying that, and if you were here for this part of the call today, doing a ritual for you is really powerful. So whether you smash a coconut, whether you find a crystal, whether you write things on slips of paper and burn them, whether you do, however you picture these things in a, bubble, or you let a balloon go, or something, they're saying for you, really do something physical connected to a physical action will be helpful for the parts of these patterns and belief systems that are really ready to go. And so to be aware of that, the same as what we just said I think we said to Ryan, but if we didn't, we want to, is that, go look around your energetic house and make sure that there aren't any closets where you're hoarding these beliefs, or you're hoarding these patterns, because that can be also very helpful for you in this process of letting go. And rest when you're tired. Rest when you're tired. The energy is really big right now, and it's exhausting to many of us. Many of us. And so there's nothing you're doing wrong. It just is part of this human experience right now. And it's the this and. It's finding that balance between giving ourselves the rest that we need and taking inspired action when we feel inspired. I hope that helps. You can comment again if there's further questions.
She said, thank you. Next we have Soraya.
Hi, Amy.
Hello, friend. We keep meeting in the middle of the Caribbean.
I know. I can't wait to get back to the Caribbean.
Me too.
I got your email, and someone else mentioned the timing of it just seemed so perfect. I was like, oh yeah, I should go today because there's something I need to hear. And I heard a lot that on Monday, well, I hadn't been feeling good, really tired after my second COVID shot. And then I had a conversation with a client that went totally south on Monday. Like, I think maybe some truths had to be spoken, but it was really intense. And I left it just feeling really bad, like, oh my God, bad girl, something really old. It felt really hysterical, kind of historical, and then I kind of left it to them to get back to me. But I kind of know I'm going to have to re-enter, but I haven't been inspired yet with what, because it's still unwinding. It was kind of a weird thing. And the more I let it unwind, the more I'm like, oh, they were kind of dumping on me. That's what kind of happened there, and maybe there was some stuff I had there too. So I'm still kind of working it out. But I had this thought, like I've had these little glimmers of, which is funny because my two things that I've been focused on is work and relationship. And there's no relationship, but I kind of thought, oh, I have to just be perfect and before that happens. And anyway, I kind of laughed because I had this moment of, I think I'm just fine the way I am the other day. And then I had this other moment about this thing that happened with the fight. And I thought maybe it was just perfect, like divinely guided. Like maybe it was perfect that this happened. I just don't know really what to do with it. And maybe I was kind of left with, I'm actually okay, no matter what happens. You know what I mean? Like maybe that's going to go away, but and I don't know. It just was, that's why coming here and what they were saying about don't do anything until you're really inspired. Like, I feel like I'm not quite yet ready to do anything. And I'm going to be okay. And I had that other impulse of, oh, maybe my self-esteem is a little better than it used to be because like I'm able to handle this, like this is weird, like normally I'd really feel like bad, right?
Oh, so powerful to be able to see that like play out in front of you and not react to it the way that you once did. That's powerful. The greater consciousness really wants to acknowledge that because it's in those spaces where we come into contact with the being able to see the old way and the way we're reacting now, or the way that we're choosing to move forward now. And when we can touch into that comparison just for a moment, because of course you don't want to unpack your bags and move in to the old because it doesn't serve you, but to be able to touch in and see the progression, the evolution that's happened is really powerful. So they want to just acknowledge that, you're seeing the things that your soul is really asking you to see and witness right now.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're showing me like it and I'll say this in I'm just going to say the way that's coming up, but they actually show me like your past self, like put them up, put them up, put them up, put them up, like that fighting mentality is so much reduced within you. It's still there, like she's still, she can be pushed to the point of that old pattern still, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's part of who you are, but that you don't have so much of a need right now to be in that space. So it's almost like you're like, okay, let's just see what happens. Does that feel resonant to you?
Yeah, I feel like I just had to I had to do the do nothing, do nothing, do nothing,
Yeah.
and let it play out, because
Yeah.
something in me said, this isn't about you. It's something else is playing out, and just let it be. So it's funny. I wrote an email and I sent it to my business partner and I said, I don't know if I should send it or not. And then I got on the call with you guys, and I don't know if I'm going to send anything, So anyway, that's, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Though I just want to celebrate that with you. That's really great to have that awareness and the space. That's what the greater consciousness is saying, is that whatever you've been doing, you've created space around you for that, like distance between you and the things that are happening. So it creates the opportunity for you not to have to respond. And part of it too, you had mentioned self-esteem, but what they're saying is that you were conditioned to have to defend and explain yourself to people so that they knew that you knew what you were talking about. And you have less of that energy now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever you're doing, keep it up, and know that it's an expanding and contracting experience. And so you'll sometimes these things come up for us to really acknowledge the distance we are from who we once were and where we're going, where we're evolving, how we're evolving. So
Yeah.
bravo.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Okay, next, I have a question written out here from Jen A, and then we have Brianna. This says, hi, I'm in a big transition period in my life. I left a job that I have been at for a while that had really been my sole focus. I'm trying to give myself time to get back to center, to find the joy in not going full speed, but I'm used to stepping on the gas to make sure I'm prepared and everything is taken care of. I know the lesson I need to learn is patience and allowing myself to just find joy in being still, but I'm really wrestling with it.
Yeah. That is such, I just feel that, Jen. So thank you for sharing that question and your experience. The big message for you is that as you're feeling this sense of restlessness, if it feels resonant to you, to take a little bit of a deep dive or an inventory into what is below the restlessness. Because the restlessness, the greater consciousness is saying, is really a symptom of this like a survival pattern that you've been using as long as you can remember, and even probably beyond before. It's this idea that somehow there's a proving of yourself, perhaps, that if you're not moving, that it somehow has a negative connotation for you. And there's other things they're saying that are below the surface here, but for you to take the time to explore this during this time of somewhat stillness, during this time of finding your way back to center, because they're saying that this is actually your lighted path. They're showing me like a runway, you know, the lighted runway back to your center, that this exploration, because one of the things that they're saying is that the tendency to be busy, to move, to do while you're very intentionally trying not to go to that space right now, it, from an energetic level, from an emotional level, is what has kept you spinning. It's what's kept you stuck in the space that you're in. And they want to recognize that you've said that this job that you were in for a while really was your joy and your passion. And they're inviting you to do that same type of exploration around the job, because there are aspects of that role or aspects of the job that you were in that were also that repeated pattern, the busyness, the prove yourself, to show your worthiness, to show your worth, to prove that you aren't, and this feels like, you know, an old story, but to prove that you're not lazy, or to prove that you're not uneducated, or to prove like that energy. And so there's a great invitation here for you to do the exploration if you feel called to it, to look at that, because the stillness, the coming back to center that you're intentionally and purposefully putting out there is really where your soul is calling you. But right now you're a little bit on a it's like you're walking backwards on one of those conveyor belts at the airport, right? And so you're not going anywhere, but you're moving. And so they want you to free up that, turn around and walk with the conveyor, so it actually will propel you more forward faster. And this exploration that they're introducing here is a big piece of that for you. And they're saying that this, you know, this 5-6 months time period that they were talking about earlier during the channeling, you know, really feels directly related to your timing. And so just to be, you know, aware and in that space too, where you can go through your energetic house and make sure you're not hoarding any of these past beliefs and behaviors that feel like, you know, maybe they're even in your blind spot at this point. No judgment, right? This is part of the journey. This is the journey. But to take, you know, to take the time to do some of that exploration as you feel inspired will really help to move things forward for you. So you feel free to write in more if you didn't get the question answered, or if you have additional questions.
Okay, next we have Brianna.
Hi, Amy.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Wonderful call. Wonderful, wonderful call. So I've been in, not forcing anything mode for a very long time, sort of waiting for the inner signal, the inner guidance. And, when I get inner guidance for things, I generally really go for it. And so I know I can take action, but a lot of the time I don't have that going on. And I kind of trust that, but recently I had like a serious, crazy health thing happen that was like such a classic wake up call kind of thing. And, knock wood, I've largely recovered from it, but it has left me with the question of, that was a pretty loud stroke from the universe, we could say. So it's left me wondering, is there something I'm not hearing, or is there something more that it wants me to wake up to that I haven't woken up to in the last month or so since it happened? Is there more to come? Because I really would prefer not to have that kind of serious health crisis be the communication.
Right. Right.
If I can proactively ward that off. So I want to make sure I'm listening.
Yeah.
And I have had a lot of ahas since then, but I don't just, the question is there more that I need to know or do differently, or, is there something I'm still not hearing?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm glad that you are on the mend. I really, really want to just communicate that. One of the things that the greater consciousness is saying right out of the gate is that this is less of a wake up call, from the standpoint of like you weren't listening. And this was more of a way that you could really hear at a deeper level some of the exploration that your soul is inviting you to take. The big thing that comes up as I'm saying this is this idea of caring for the caregiver, and where we are so often, we feel so fulfilled and so on purpose and so on point when we're taking care of others, that we tend to sometimes lose sight of taking care of ourselves. And they're saying this isn't a judgment, but a deeper understanding of how to come home to yourself so that you become the number one priority. Number one, they're saying number one with a big capital number one. Big and bold and neon signs and ringing bells. Does that resonate for you?
It does, and it also challenges me because my family is still relying on me to stay involved in very complicated stuff going on with my dad's health and with the family business, and I keep trying to move away from it, and I keep getting pulled back in.
So this is a time for you to sort and sift. Right. We are in, it's the this and, so it doesn't have to be one or the other.
Mhm.
But to look at, and they're actually like being very practical when they're saying this, to look at some examples of the things that you're being asked to or pulled into, and just see if you can rework the scenario so that it puts you first. So you can still help, you can still be involved, but that you're the first, like on the to-do list is, what does Brianna need? And then how do I move through the other things? It's
Mhm.
really critical.
Mhm.
And part of the experience that you're going through is that idea that, what do I need to do to take care of me? And they're saying that you've done a lot since the incident or since the illness
Mhm.
to take care of you. But here's the crossroad that you come to. As you start to feel better, you tend to forget that aspect and move back into the old pattern of caring.
Mhm.
And so neither are wrong, right? Your human experience is creating circumstances where you're being asked to step into this caregiver role. And you can certainly do that, but you have to take yourself into consideration and not lose the ahas, the epiphanies, the realizations that you've had. Does that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
It really, they're saying it feels big. It feels insurmountable in some ways, but they're saying that as you set the intention to find the ways, even if you're replaying things that have already happened, sort of to look at the ways that it could be done differently in the future, in that you open up more ease for you to traverse these experiences, and
Mhm.
not less. It doesn't become more complicated, it becomes less. It doesn't feel more exhausting, it becomes more refreshing. It's that this and aspect that's very important for you right now.
And that's not just what I'm hearing is that's not just in the sense of let it go more, hand it back to the divine, like be 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 more surrendered around it to get some space. So I'm not trying to do too much, but I'm hearing that it's also some actual physical world practical things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for you, it's not, it doesn't take away from the surrendering. But when you surrender, you can then be given inspired action. And so that's the this and with this. They're bringing up this, and I'm not going to get this right because I don't really fully know the story, but there's a parable or a fable or a story of a man who's on a roof and there's a flood and he says, God, save me. And so a boat pulls up and they said, come on, get in the boat. And he says, no, God is going to save me. And then, like a helicopter comes by and they say, come on, get in the basket. And the man says, no, God is going to save me. Well, then the water rises, he drowns and he says to God, why didn't you save me? And God says, well, I sent you all these things. So he had to not just sit there surrendering that God was going to save him. He had to then take action. And so it's kind of I'm probably not 100% on that story, but the gist of it is that when we surrender, we also have to be in the space to take the actions we're inspired to take. And not just wait for it to sort itself out, because part of our evolutionary process is participating in the sorting out. But just not from the place of pushing, driving, striving, forcing it to be fixed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm also having to trust that I'll know when there's something that's supposed to take center stage in my life that isn't family related. Like, I'll know when I can switch gears and not put most of my energy there.
Yes. And so again, in the this and space, they're saying you are center stage. Everything else comes secondary. And that's the shift that you make first. The family stuff will sort itself out, but the energy shift that you make when you put yourself first, even if you don't tell anyone you're doing it, even if you just have a little notebook next to you that says, okay, they need me to do this. How do I craft this, doing this so that it puts me first? It is in that energy shift that actually creates space for them to start to not be so reliant on you, because there are other ways for things to sort out for them, but they're very conditioned to relying on it being sorted out through you. And so as you begin to shift that energy through just the acknowledgement of what's happening and the acknowledgement of how you are the center of it, the priority, it starts to shift on its own. That part shifts. So you don't have to fix that part when you come into alignment with your part, with the part that you actually have influence with, co-creative energy with.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that was it. Just Jen had said, thank you. I appreciate it. It really struck a chord. I've been so consumed with work and the stress that came with it that I've not been tuned into my spirit guides as I have in the past. I really appreciate it, Amy.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. For those that are listening in replay, I am so grateful for this community. We'll be doing this again in June. I'll send an email out ahead of time, and then we'll likely continue to do these calls on a monthly basis, though I am perhaps going to shift the day and or timing a little bit. But I'll let you guys know as we go forward. And I may even ask in the email when I send the replay out if there's a preference of a day or time, just to get an idea, because and it's funny because they had me set the series up just through June. So I knew that there were going to be some shifts happening around the timing of it, but they have given me the green light that we're going to keep doing these calls every month, which is very exciting for me. So many blessings and big love to you all. I look forward, hopefully, to see you again in the coming months on these calls. And yeah, big love, big love. Bye-bye.